credit crisis? Is the worst behind us?
Some on our Fox panel would hope so, some not. But here now to talk about it, Nicole Ridgway, senior editor of SmartMoney.com, Mike Norman of the Economic Contrarian Update, and Jim Pettakakis from U.S. News and World Report. Not, Jim, that anybody would hope that it isn't over, but some believe that this is just a tease and that we've seen a 500-point gain over the past 2 days because we haven't had some really new bad news. What do you think?
Well, it's not that we just haven't had new, really bad news. We've had some, positive news. I'll tell you, when all this started, I said I could only get too bearish. I have 525 reasons to be positive. That was a 525 basis points the Fed could theoretically cut to help both ease the housing crisis and ease the credit crisis. I mean, the pessimism just got completely out of control. I mean, I started reading stories about, forget about recession, a depression happening. That leads me to believe that the analysis of the credit crunch was completely wrong. Is it over? Are there still going to be problems? Are there still going to be write-downs? I'm pretty sure, but I think what we saw from the Fed, especially in comments today, that they recognize the problem and they're going to do what it takes to prevent it from spilling over to the rest of the economy, which, by the way, is actually holding up pretty well. I mean, those holiday sales over the weekend, very good. I mean, there is some reason for optimism. This just isn't some technical reaction.
All right. And this, Mike, on a day when Goldman Sachs says it's more likely that we're going to have a recession.
Yeah, I don't buy the recession theory. Look, if you look at the contribution from exports to GDP in the third quarter, it outweighed more than 2 to 1 the loss we had from housing. I will say this. I'm kind of sad today. I'm a little bit sad.
Why?
Okay. I think Peter Schiff was supposed to be on the program. He's probably not feeling well.
Well, guess what? Guess what? Because you're so sad.
And I feel for them. People think I don't like him. I do like him, and I'm a thoughtful person at heart, really. And I brought some of this, and maybe he's home.
It's Pepto-Bismol, Peter. He's holding up a
guess what? Just for you, Mike Norman, we've got Peter.
All right. Peter, I do care about you. I care about you.
I know Peter's going to say, I don't need that.
It's going to be a lot. I know you've been saying it's going to be a lot lower. It must be a tough day for you. But look, buddy, I'm here to help.
Mike, I guess they say money can't buy happiness, right? So I'll just be happy with all the money. And you can, but anyway, look, it's just getting started. The credit crunch is just beginning. It's nowhere near over. And what we're witnessing right now, this is the beginning of the end of consumer credit as we know it in the United States. By the end of next year, it's not just mortgages. Americans are not going to be able to borrow money to buy anything. It's going to be all this consumer credit, whether it's for automobiles, for education, for credit cards. The world is not going to lend us any more money. We're not going to be able to borrow money from the people in Europe or Asia. We can't pay it back.
Go ahead, Jim.
They just lent us money. I mean, my gosh, these sovereign wealth funds, they just put in $7.5 billion. I don't think they think, I mean, they're not tossing that money down the sewer.
No.
They think that...
I'm talking about consumer credit. They're going to use their dollars.
I understand that. Let me finish. But you just expanded it to all credit. You just expanded it to all credit.
No.
Everything's going in the tank.
No. Hold on. Let me finish. Businesses will be able to get credit. Foreigners will use their dollars to buy up our assets. But they're not going to lend money to people to buy houses, to buy television sets, to buy cars, to take vacations, to buy gasoline, or to buy Christmas presents.
Well, hold on a second. We haven't heard from one of our guests here, Nicole Ridgway. Great to see you. Of course, Peter included houses into consumer credit, but if, in fact, you include mortgages in there, that's basically the end of our capitalist system if there's no credit.
No, it's the end of our phony system.
Peter, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, if there's no credit being extended to consumers, obviously the auto market would be hit further, the housing market would be hit further. Seems a bit extreme what he's saying. I do think that banks are going to be a little more reluctant to just dole out credit to anyone. They'll be doing much closer background checks and that sort of thing. But, we're not going to see the cheap money being turned around that we saw before. But credit will be
Mike, why is the market up 300 points today?
The market is up 300 points because I think yesterday was a catalyst. You saw the infusion of cash into Citi from Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. In addition, Liz, as we've been saying, there's been a pervasive psychology, incredibly gloomy. Look, some data came out on Monday from the Fed through the third quarter. You talk about bank position, financial position, Peter. If you look at total charge-offs right now, they are running far below the level we saw in 2002 and about, extremely below where we saw it in the early 1990s. Also, delinquency is the same thing. No way, when you look at the actual data and the facts, and understandably and admittedly, Peter, The numbers will rise through the fourth quarter. I agree with you. But they're not going to come anywhere near the high levels we saw in 2002 and 1990. What does
Mike,
it mean? It means the banking system is fine, Peter.
No,
it's absolutely fine.
Mike, the banking system is not fine. In fact, if our banks had to mark all their securities to market, they'd all be insolvent right now. This is going to get a lot worse. You know, today's rally is probably the catalyst was you had the Fed governor coming out. Hold on. Let me finish. You had a Fed governor.
In between the sentence, take a swing,
let me make an important point before you make a joke. So basically what you have is a Fed governor coming out and saying that he was wrong. The economy is a lot worse than he thought. And rather than the markets looking at the fact that, hey, this guy just admitted he doesn't know what he's talking about, the market is celebrating the fact that we're going to get another shot of Fed heroin, another rate cut. And the rate cut is not going to help. It's not going to help the economy. It's not going to help the housing market. You know, it's not. This is bad for the dollar. It's bad for our economy. There's nothing good about the Fed trading more.
All right, hold on. Let's take one of those points. Jim Petrakakis, what about the fact the Fed is now owning up to the fact that perhaps the economy is bad enough so that we do need another rate cut? Is that good news?
Right. Well, I mean, it is good news because most everybody else on Wall Street
that the Fed sees our economy in worse shape than they thought.
Right. Right, because that is going to lead to action. Listen, I mean, I'm not apocalyptic about this economy at all, but I do think that the insurance of some further rate hikes is fine. I mean, the rest. I mean, if you remember, listen, right,
the rate cuts. Yeah.
Remember at Halloween. Remember at Halloween when they came out with that statement, they cut 25 basis points and they gave that very balanced statement. I mean, that Halloween was a nightmare for investors because it did show that the Fed didn't fully grasp perhaps how weak the economy was. So now they're going to catch up. They'll start cutting. And I just don't see the apocalyptic scenario that some people are portraying. Incomes remain good. Unemployment remains low. You get some Fed rate cuts. That's also good for the market. People feel wealthier from the stock market wealth. That is not an apocalypse now scenario.
Nicole, hold on, Nicole. We've seen the market sometimes take bad news as good news and then bad news as bad news. Right now they're taking bad news, meaning that the Fed is sort of crying uncle and saying, look, things are bad, as good news, and that's why the market is higher. At least that seems to be a consensus here. What would turn that around to make the market take bad news as really bad news?
You know, I think that even with the consumer confidence numbers being at a 2-year low, for some reason I think that there's been such negative momentum leading up to this that people kind of look at anything, the rate hike or the rate cut, being something that would promote spending. Now, what could actually bring this market down again? Maybe more bad news out of the banks. Just a continuing feeling that this is just not going to go away.
If we're going to worry about one thing, if I could just quickly say this, actions like Schumer going after Countrywide,
Senator Schumer
going, things like this could put a pall. Really, the type of things that Peter's worried about, which is not going to come about in the economy as it is functioning right now. But if we get these draconian measures to say, hey, we're fixing the system, when in fact they're throwing a wrench into the works, that could be bad.
Peter?
Well.